The radioactive waste entered Winston's body and brought him back to life, but at the same time caused his entire body to mutate. As he climbed out of the pool, his body had turned into a deformed green creature, and he screamed in terror.
You fucked up this time! With a mob! Oh shit, wait, no!
A reporter immediately approached him for an interview on camera, and Wade, who was watching TV, instantly recognized Winston's voice. Late at night, a reporter named Melvin received an unexpected visitor, Doherty, an employee from the BTH pharmaceutical company. It turned out the company had been dumping waste carelessly for a long time, causing mutations in animals and possibly spreading diseases among local residents. Melvin and Doherty agreed to expose the company's crimes to the public. But when they checked the security cameras, they saw that the building was already surrounded by the Killer Nuts, a brutal gang and a famous band hired by BTH to protect the company's secrets. Melvin told Doherty to run while he screamed to draw the Nuts' attention toward himself. Unfortunately, when Doherty tried to escape through the stairwell, her path was blocked by the thugs. With no other choice, he leapt over the stair rail to get away. When he landed, the flash drive containing all the crucial data about BTH's crimes was completely destroyed. Meanwhile, at the office, the Nuts managed to break in and shot Melvin multiple times. Even though his body was covered in blood, Melvin still struggled to get up until they shot him again, but Melvin still didn't fall. This time, the Nuts fired a trident-shaped weapon. The weapon struck Melvin and sent him flying out the window. From outside, Doherty could only watch as Melvin fell to his death right in front of her eyes. Then, without thinking, she ran away. Now the story moves to Winston. As usual, he woke up early to start his workday. Since his wife's death, Winston had been the only one taking care of his stepson, Wade. But their relationship wasn't very close. When they both left the house, Winston saw his neighbor Daisy being harassed by Spence, a greedy man forcing her to sell her home. Spence kept threatening and yelling until Daisy finally gave in and agreed. Before leaving, Spence said he'd come back later with the paperwork. But before he left, he cruelly threw Daisy's cat into the middle of the street. Winston instinctively ran to save the cat, nearly getting hit by a car in the process. Meanwhile, Wade walked away angrily. Winston followed to make sure he was okay. But Wade was mad, blaming Winston for not helping Daisy. Winston could only explain that sometimes there are situations they just can't fight against. After that, Winston continued to the TH factory, where he worked as a janitor. The factory alarms often went off, and Winston frequently heard people screaming, but he chose not to get involved. After his shift ended, Winston went to the doctor to get his test results. Sadly, the results shattered his world. He had a malignant brain tumor, and the doctor said he only had 1 year left to live. Surgery was no longer possible at this stage, and the only available treatment cost a fortune. Winston immediately called BPJS and his private insurance company, but the result was the same. They said the treatment wasn't covered, even though he had purchased the most expensive platinum plan. Winston was left stunned, feeling like his life had completely hit a dead end. Meanwhile, elsewhere, BTH's big boss, Robert, was furious because his company's stock prices had plummeted. People had started talking about Robert's shady dealings, from his partnerships with criminal gangs to his company's illegal toxic waste dumping. His brother, Fritz, was the head of BTH security and the one managing the Killer Nuts gang. Already enraged, Robert exploded when he heard they had failed to kill Doherty. He smashed the TV in anger and ordered Fritz to fix the problem immediately. Fritz went straight to where the Killer Nuts were rehearsing and ordered them to hunt down Doherty. The gang stormed into Doherty's house, trashed the entire place searching for her, but they still couldn't find her. Doherty had actually been hiding across the street, waiting until they left before sneaking back home. Once inside, her roommate yelled at her for nearly getting them both attacked because of her mess. But Doherty didn't care. She was focused only on a false floor panel in her room. Luckily, her bag was still safely hidden there. She grabbed the bag and said she wasn't coming back again. Meanwhile, at school, Wade tried out for the upcoming talent show. But when he got on stage, he became so nervous that he ran off before finishing his act. The video went viral, and everyone laughed at him online. At home, Winston tried to cheer Wade up in a silly way. He wore a ballet skirt and started dancing to make him laugh. But instead of smiling, Wade got even angrier. At that moment, Wade noticed some medical papers on the table, but before he could read them, Winston quickly snatched and hid the documents. After that, Winston threw the medical papers into the trash and went out for a drink. At a special event, Robert was scolded by his business partners, including the mayor. Suddenly, Spence pulled Robert aside to talk to his father, Thad, a powerful mafia boss. Thad was furious at Robert for taking a loan from him without paying it back. Not long after, Robert received an award, and instead of worrying, he bragged proudly. At the same time, Winston snuck in, approached Robert, and explained that he had worked for 13 years without any trouble, so he deserved better insurance. Robert pretended to sympathize and told his assistant, Kissy, to handle it. Kissy then invited Winston outside, promising to discuss it, but once outside, she locked the door and left him there. From the other side, Winston could hear them laughing at him. Enraged, Winston returned to BTH, while Doherty watched from the shadows. When the door opened for Winston, Doherty slipped in too. He triggered the security alarm, and Fritz immediately called the killer nuts to deal with it. While Doherty used a device to steal samples of hazardous waste, Winston dipped his mop into radioactive waste and used it to threaten a security guard, forcing him to stuff the company's money into a bag. On the way out, Winston accidentally bumped into Doherty, and Doherty's sample fell into the bag full of money, which caught fire. The nuts appeared behind them, so Doherty grabbed Winston's ID and they ran together. The path ahead was blocked by a fence, which Doherty easily jumped over. He tried to help Winston too, but Winston didn't move fast enough. With the nuts getting closer, Doherty had no choice but to leave. The thugs surrounded Winston and shot him in the face. Fritz realized the mistake and yelled at them before ordering them to clean it up. Winston's body and mop were dumped into the radioactive waste pool to erase all evidence, while Doherty watched from afar. The radioactive waste entered Winston's body and brought him back to life, but at the same time caused his entire body to mutate. As he climbed out of the pool, his body had turned into a deformed green creature, and he screamed in terror. He tried to go home, but when he arrived, he saw Daisy signing the property papers for Spence. Not wanting to be seen, Winston climbed the fire escape toward his apartment window. Meanwhile, Wade called the police because his stepfather hadn't come home. When he saw the monster's silhouette at the window, he panicked and threw an ashtray at it. The ashtray hit Winston's face, causing him to fall and crash onto Spence's car. Hearing the alarm, Spence went outside to check and was shocked when he saw Winston, then began shooting at him. But Winston's new body pushed the bullets out, and his wounds healed instantly. Enraged, Winston tore off Spence's arm while the people on the street started pulling out their phones to record. Panicked, Winston ran away while Daisy took the chance to grab back her property papers from Spence. When the police arrived, the crowd went wild and exaggerated the story, calling Winston a demon, a monster, and all sorts of names. The officer fired his gun into the air and announced they were forming a mob. The crazed crowd grabbed torches and chased Winston into the forest, where he finally collapsed. The next morning, Winston woke up in a small camp belonging to a homeless man named Guthrie, who wasn't afraid of his appearance at all. Guthrie held the mop Winston used before and handed it back to him, saying, "This has to be used responsibly." Meanwhile, Wade was watching TV and saw that the authorities were searching for the monster he had seen, so he called the station to give them information. At a fast food restaurant, a radical gang called the Nasty Lads took over the place and held the customers hostage in protest of the restaurant's name change. It used to be called Mr. Meat, but now it had been renamed Miss Meat. When a detective tried to negotiate with their leader, he was shot. Meanwhile, Winston sneaked back into the city and saw the chaos. A blind customer insulted the lads and splashed his drink on their leader. When the leader tried to shoot back, Winston burst through the back door and smashed him with a mop, crushing half his face. Then, Winston went berserk and started attacking all the lads, killing them one by one. even splitting one thug's stomach open from behind. After the bloody fight, all the hostages were finally free. The police, who had been ready to shoot, stopped when the hostages explained that Winston was actually their hero. A reporter immediately approached for an on-camera interview, and Wade, who was watching TV, instantly recognized Winston's voice. Elsewhere, Spence also saw the news and realized the creature was the same man who had once hurt him. Thad, upon hearing the news, immediately ordered his men to hunt Winston down. Meanwhile, Winston suddenly became a celebrity. People on the streets looked at him like a superhero. Some even took selfies with him. But when he stopped for a moment, Winston realized something strange. His urine was acidic. The media began to speculate that the bizarre mutation was caused by BTH. From there, they started calling Winston the Toxic Avenger, or Toxie. On the other hand, Robert was furious with Kissy and Fritz for letting Doherty escape. He began to suspect that Winston was actually working with Doherty. Robert was also upset that the media had turned the new hero into a sensation. But upon closer look, he realized the mutated creature was the same man, the janitor who once worked at BTH, because he was wearing the same tutu. Realizing that his own chemical pool had caused all this, Robert demanded an explanation from his scientists. They said the mutation had occurred because the toxic waste had mixed with a rare genetic marker. Robert immediately ordered them to recreate the mutation, but first, they needed to capture Winston. Meanwhile, Doherty went to Winston's apartment. Wade, who had seen his stepfather's ID card, finally allowed her inside. Doherty told him what had happened that night at the factory, the night his stepfather died. He also said that his mother had passed away from exposure to toxic waste. Suddenly, the killer nuts burst into the apartment. Doherty quickly helped Wade escape through the window. One of the thugs shot Wade, but it turned out to be just to attach a tracker to his leg. On the road, they met Winston, and Doherty finally told Wade about his stepfather's cancer. Their conversation was cut short when Thad's men opened fire on Winston. Doherty pulled Wade away while Winston healed and killed his attackers with the mop before fleeing. In the forest, Wade heard a beeping sound and discovered the tracker. The nuts arrived and shot Doherty before capturing Wade. Meanwhile, Winston was hiding in an abandoned building, checking his wounds. The bullets had come out, but the holes hadn't closed yet. Thad's other men were closing in, so Winston hid in a pile of garbage bags and ambushed the first thug, killing him instantly. Then, he used the body as a decoy to lure another thug and killed him too. Finally, he jumped onto their car, tore off the driver's head, and the car sped off as he rolled over the severed head. After that, Winston found Doherty and brought him to the homeless camp. Guthrie said he used to be a doctor, but couldn't help anymore. Winston had no other choice but to drip his own blood into Doherty's wound to heal her. When Doherty woke up, he agreed to team up with Winston. In the Nuts van, Fritz told Wade not to be scared because he only wanted Winston. Wade snapped, saying at least Winston cared about him, and finally called him Dad. Fritz became upset because no one had ever cared about him like that, which made him even angrier. Meanwhile, Thad, furious, called Robert to complain about Winston, blaming BTH for creating him. Thad wanted to punish Robert, but Robert saw Fritz arriving with Wade and told Thad that everything was under control. Sometime later, the Killer Nuts were performing on stage. Doherty unplugged the band's microphone and replaced it with Winston's mic. Winston walked through the crowd, singing the band's most popular song. The crowd cheered wildly, even flashing personal parts at him. The band's singer grew angry because the crowd liked Winston more. He shot at Winston, but Winston ripped off the top of his head with the mop. The crowd panicked and ran, while the rest of the band chased Winston for revenge. Winston dodged an attack from a falling band member who died instantly. Then Winston swung his mop, impaling another musician's head and lodging it into the mixer table, electrocuting the DJ to death. He knocked down the guitarist with several blows, tore off his beard, and forced him to eat it. The crowd was horrified, realizing their hero was actually a monster. Winston then told the truth about the band and BTH. The last member tried to escape, but Doherty hit him with a wooden plank. Winston asked about Wade while pulling off the man's mask. Underneath was a tiny head. The small voice revealed Wade's location. Moments later, the duo arrived at Robert's mansion. Winston pulled out one of his eyes to scout the area and spotted 2 guards. Doherty tried to seduce them, but the guards were too nervous around women and accidentally shot each other. Trapped in the garden shed, Wade saw Winston and tried to warn him about the danger, but it was too late. The statue of Robert released sleeping gas toward them. When they woke up, they found their bodies chained. The scientists tried to take Winston's blood samples to make a serum for Robert, but the experiment failed. Robert forced the scientists to repeat the experiment until it worked, making Winston endure several painful extractions. Finally, they succeeded in creating the perfect serum, but Robert didn't want to wait and immediately grabbed the bottle. Soon after, Thad arrived with his men, turning on the news broadcast. The footage showed Winston's rampage at the concert, and the mayor announced that the city would no longer support BTH. Thad was furious and wanted to punish Robert for failing to handle the situation, but Robert drank the serum. At first, Robert's transformation didn't look extreme, but his strength and speed increased drastically. Within seconds, he slaughtered Thad and his men in the most brutal way. When Kissy came looking for him, his transformation was complete. Robert's body had turned into a monster. Kissy, fascinated, wanted to drink the serum too, but only a few drops remained. Soon after, Robert began to feel immense pain. The scientists panicked, explaining that the serum wasn't stable yet. Kissy screamed at them to fix it, then ordered the guards to kill all the hostages, including Wade. Fritz was shocked. When Kissy returned, she saw that her own body was also starting to mutate from the serum's effects. Fritz refused to kill an innocent child and confronted the guards, saying that the monster wasn't Robert anymore. Kissy, furious, kicked Fritz in the groin and beat him with a metal rod. In the cell, Doherty heard that Wade was about to be killed and told Winston to fight back. Unfortunately, their chains were too strong to break. Suddenly, Winston remembered his acid pee. He unzipped his pants and urinated on the chains until they rusted and finally broke free. Doherty then stole a computer to retrieve the evidence, beat while Winston kicked down the door and grabbed his mop. 2 guards appeared. Winston shouted to draw attention, then smashed one of their faces with a rock, killing him instantly. The other guard fired his gun, but the bullet hit a gas tank, causing a massive explosion that destroyed the entire warehouse. The shockwave threw Winston backward. He screamed in panic, thinking Wade was dead. Suddenly, Robert appeared with an axe and attacked. They fought fiercely, trading heavy blows until their weapons got stuck together. The radioactive mop began corroding the axe, allowing Robert to snatch and throw away Winston's weapon before trying to cut his throat. The attack failed because the axe had been weakened by the toxins. Winston grabbed his mop again and burned Robert's face, forcing him to flee. A chase ensued as they rolled down a hill, fighting. Meanwhile, Doherty returned to the car, but Kissy appeared from behind and attacked her with a chain. After a brutal fight, Kissy managed to knock Doherty down, but she quickly got up and fought back. Kissy was distracted by Robert and Winston's battle nearby, giving Doherty the chance to smash her head with a toilet. Elsewhere, Robert overpowered Winston, but before he could finish him, Doherty hit Robert with the toilet too. Robert still refused to give up and attacked with a container of toxic waste. Winston shattered the axe and tackled him, punching him repeatedly. Winston then grabbed Robert's neck, trying to strangle him, but Wade appeared and called out, "Dad!" It turned out Fritz had used a secret tunnel to save Wade. Robert tried to attack again, but Winston threw him with the mop onto a car. Robert's head pierced through the hood, and Doherty started the engine to finish him off. After that, Winston tried to reunite with Wade, but Kissy attacked him from behind. When Fritz tried to stop her, his neck was also cut off. Winston rammed into Kissy, and they both fell into a pool of spilled waste, causing a massive explosion that killed her. Sometime later, Winston woke up in a hospital. The blind woman from the burger incident was there. It turned out she was a special agent. She turned on the TV, and they saw the news confirming that Doherty had leaked data exposing BT-8's conspiracy, including the involvement of the mayor and several police officers. The agent said she had been chasing BT-8 for years and thanked Winston, assuring him he would not be arrested. The doctor told him that Winston's mutation had cured his cancer. When Winston left the hospital, Daisy and a crowd of people were waiting to thank him for saving the city. Wade even hugged him for the first time. Doherty waved goodbye from afar. In another room, Fritz was under police custody, and Kissy had regained consciousness. At the school talent show, Wade finally had the courage to perform, and Winston proudly supported him from behind the stage. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.